Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA, by Jordan Krizek. What is FERPA? FERPA is a federal law established in 1974. Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act is a federal law that protects the confidentiality of student education records. This prevents schools from sharing student data without parental consent. FERPA is administered by the Family Policy Compliance Office and the Department of Education. Privacy Technical Assistance Center has a one-stop resource for education stakeholders to learn about data privacy, confidentiality, and security practices. So what are records? Some of the records may be the students' full names, social security number, and their student number in their school, their date of birth, home addresses, health records, special education referrals, some biometric data, possibly their fingerprints, and facial scans. Who can access educational records? Parents themselves, students 18 or older, or students who attend a school past high school. So in many cases, there are students that are under the age of 18 that do go to college, and once they pretty much get out of the school, leave the school, and go on to a college or post-secondary education, those rights are given to them to access their educational records. There are school officials who have legitimate need to view the records, whether it might be for police or maybe transfers as well. Officials from other schools who the student is transferring to, state educational agencies, contractors, consultants, and other officials who districts have outsourced educational records to. So some of these schools that are large, they outsource it to other contractors or consultants or vendors, and they keep all the records for the schools. Financial aid purposes, organizations conducting studies for educational institutions to develop tests, and also in case of emergencies, appropriate persons. Surveillance camera. The Fourth Amendment prohibits governmental entities such as public schools from conducting unreasonable searches. Courts ruled that cameras in bathrooms and locker rooms are unconstitutional forms of invasion of privacy. Places such as buses, halls, parking lots, and stairwells are common places for cameras and are upheld in court for student controversies. So pretty much what it is you're obviously not going to see cameras in the bathrooms or locker rooms. That is a big invasion of privacy, but where they're not so much invasion of privacy because there's more students and eyes out there and teachers is the buses, halls, and that is where a lot of criminal partaking might come into place, so that the court views that as constitutional, where they are able to go in and police might go in and look at that and see if something was done. Schools should notify parents and students through policies, student handbooks, and signage that cameras are placed throughout the school and they need to anticipate having their image captured. With this day and age, there are a lot of cameras everywhere just for everyone's peace of mind. So this should not be new to anyone, but suppose someone new came over from a different country, this would help them just realize the fact that there are cameras in place for their safety and for everyone else's. FERPA and surveillance camera. Images of students captured on surveillance camera quality as education records when photos or video is directly related to a student and maintained by the educational institution. Recordings are directly related to an individual when, whether the recording is used for disciplinary action involving the student, whether the recording depicts any activity that would reasonably result in a use of a disciplinary action, shows a student violating the law, or shows a student getting injured, attacked, victimized, ill, or have a health emergency. Whether the school intends to make a specific student the focus of the recording, whether the content contains personally identifiable information from a student's education record. Parents' access to surveillance recordings. A surveillance recording becomes an educational record when the recording is directly related to the student and is maintained by the educational institution. The parents are to be informed when recording is kept for educational purposes. In the case of a fight happens on a bus, students involved or located on the bus, parents will be notified. They just want to let them know that their child was in the bus at the time, and the recording will be kept on personal file. Censoring or segregating parts of the tape or individuals who are not involved will be erased. Or they can also be blurred out. Their faces can be blurred out as well. Unintentional ways schools might be violating FERPA. Being careful with vendors. FERPA warns schools of the data vendors reveal. If vendors misuse or display data, the school is still at fault. Carefully screening vendors helps. Know when to hold and release records. Parents own FERPA records until the student is 18 or is in the post-secondary education. A school cannot deny access to the parent of the student's records. A school cannot deny access to a student for their records if they are over 18 of age or in a post-secondary education. Be cautious about what you tell to whom. Teachers can speak to others about what they saw. This is more about maybe a attack or vandalism or a fight. Principals are not allowed to read a report on the incident. FERPA covers a record, so a principal's report, but it does not cover confidentiality law. So a teacher telling everyone that FERPA does not cover that. What FERPA aims to do. It aims to prevent the disclosure of personal identifiable information from their education records without consent, access to review and inspect student education records, request correlation of these education records. 8 ways to ensure your school is FERPA compliant. Raise FERPA awareness, ensure all employees know about FERPA. Confirm that FERPA applies to you. It applies to all public and charter schools. Know the rights, protections, and expectations. Learn, understand, and comply those. Choose compliant vendors. Choose third-party vendors who comply with FERPA. Train all school employees. Conduct yearly training on FERPA. Implement compliant policies and procedures. Policies and procedures make it easier to follow. Encrypt files and emails. Extra layer of protection for school employees. Implement other protection tools, compliance monitoring mechanisms, and case management software. Does FERPA apply to you? FERPA applies to all schools that receive federal funding for any program administered by the Department of Education. FERPA also applies to colleges and universities, public or private, that grants students financial assistance from the federal government. Immigration and Customs enforcement in schools. Under federal law, state and local agencies are required to provide all students an equal access to public education. The United States Department of Justice and the United States Department of Education issued a reminder in 2014 that it is the district's federal duty to give equal educational opportunities for any students residing in their district. FERPA violation. If parents or eligible students believe that their rights under FERPA have been violated, they may file a formal complaint with the department. FERPA should operate effectively and efficiently with a formally investigation. Final determinations could take months or years to complete. In some cases, the underlying issue has long since been resolved, or the student is no longer in attendance at the educational agency or institution. Data destruction. Districts need to preserve some students' records for retention, but like most students, once they leave the building, the records can be destroyed. Third parties who use educational records for testing or evaluating also need to destroy records after the use of them are finished. FERPA does not have any specific regulations when it comes to disposing of data, other than requiring the institution to safeguard any data from unauthorized disposition. Administrators need to be aware of the different methods to dispose data. Like an honor roll student are less confidential, so those can easily be looked at. But students' social security numbers, students' full name, addresses need to be disposed of at the highest caution. FERPA future. More and more school districts are moving to the technology-based software to store and file students' educational records. But now there are more attacks on students' identity theft, fraud, and extortion. Many school districts are outsourcing digital record-kept files to third-party resources. And here are my resources.